On this Friday night, Justin Trudeau on the record. The Prime Minister defends his government's Convoy response.
Things were not getting better. This was the right thing to do, and we did it.
How his historic testimony shapes the weeks-long inquiry into the Emergencies Act. Fighting for freedom. A pair of Indigenous sisters search for justice after nearly 3 decades behind bars. Repairing Black Friday. The Canadian retailers looking to give back on one of the biggest shopping days of the year. And choosing love.
We really feel like we're a movement.
How one London shop is using the holiday rush to help refugees in need.
Global National with Farah Nasser.
There is a sense that the police of jurisdiction had lost control and wasn't able to control the situation.
In a packed room, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau vigorously defended his government's decision to use the Emergencies Act during the so-called Freedom Convoy. After 6 weeks of dramatic testimony, he was the final and most anticipated witness to testify. Because despite the inquiry hearing from high-ranking politicians, their aides, law enforcement officials, only the Prime Minister can put his signature on the document invoking the Act, which he did for the first time in the 34-year history of the law. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. The Prime Minister was candid in describing his reason for enacting those unprecedented powers, saying it came down to a question: what if he didn't? Our chief political correspondent, David Akin, joins us now. David, a rare moment for a sitting PM. You've covered the inquiry extensively. What was your takeaway from his testimony?
Well, Farah, the Prime Minister spent more than 5 hours on the stand today. That's a remarkable amount of time. And he provided new insights into his rationale for invoking the Emergencies Act. He talked about the fears he had of escalating violence and how he personally came to justify doing what no Prime Minister had ever done.
The key question, of course, why? Why did Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoke the Emergencies Act?
We could not say that there was no potential for threats of serious violence to happen over the coming days. We were seeing things escalate, not things get under control.
But what if he didn't sign it? What if he had waited another couple of weeks?
What if the worst had happened in those following days? What if someone had gotten hurt? The responsibility of a Prime Minister is to make the tough calls and keep people safe.
And why did he not just meet the protesters, some of whom were sitting there meters away from him on Friday and who had testified earlier at this same commission that that's all they really wanted, a meeting?
We wanted to be heard. We wanted to have discussions.
But Trudeau saw it quite differently.
It was clear that it wasn't that they just wanted to be heard. They wanted to be obeyed. They wanted us to change public policy, public health policy designed to help Canadians.
The Commission Council wondered if future Prime Ministers will now find it easy to invoke the Emergencies Act against anything they might perceive as an emergency.
But do you worry about the floodgates aspect of this, that having done this, you've now maybe unleashed the Kraken?
This wasn't something we were eager to do. And I dare say that future governments are likely to look at this experience and say, yeah, no, it's not something we want to go through lightly.
Did this PM have any regrets?
I was very comfortable that we were at a moment where this was the right thing to do. And we did it.
Now, does the Commissioner, Justice Paul Rouleau, agree that Trudeau did the right thing? Rouleau has until February to answer that question. Farah.
David Akin in Ottawa. Thank you, David. The public inquiry provided Canadians with an extraordinary look inside government and police operations during a public crisis. It exposed a frenzy of confusion and frustration amongst top politicians and law enforcement officials. But has all the testimony brought us any closer to understanding whether the Emergencies Act was needed or not? Our Eric Sorensen looks at what we've learned over the past 6 weeks.
This was the moment police moved in with force, backed for the first time in Canadian history by the Emergencies Act. It ended a 3-week blockade of Parliament Hill and set off a 6-week inquiry with one central question: were those emergency powers justified? While the noisy occupation and the misery of local residents played out in public, the inquiry revealed behind-the-scenes dysfunction between levels of government and police jurisdictions. Ottawa police were unprepared for a long standoff. At one point, the federal justice minister texted that the city's police chief was incompetent.
I was quite frustrated, I will admit.
There was municipal anger toward the provincial premier, Doug Ford, for not being engaged, even though provincial police were key players.
It was frustrating that the province was not as responsive.
Frustration that police developed a plan, but the RCMP commissioner did not present it to cabinet. And frustration that protests, especially at the border, were damaging relations with our largest trading partner.
That was a dangerous moment for Canada, I felt.
But were extraordinary powers restricting civil liberties across the country needed to subdue a public protest?
I'm Canadian, and I have that democratic right.
After 6 weeks of testimony, we still have not heard anything that would justify the invocation of the Emergencies Act, which is an extraordinary piece of legislation that allows the government to create new criminal law by executive order.
But top security and intelligence officials advise that the Emergencies Act was necessary.
The regular tools were just not enough to address the situation.
Against the backdrop of a public crisis and the political realities at the time, Commissioner Paul Rouleau will have to consider detailed legal interpretations of the Emergencies Act, with only weeks to sum it all up.
From police governance through intergovernmental relations to the content of the CSIS Act to disinformation to the genesis of the Freedom Convoy, it's going to be a very tight time frame to deal with all of that meaningfully.
It's already evident that the inquiry exposed a lack of intergovernmental cooperation among police and politicians, suggesting a better coordinated response could resolve a similar crisis before the Emergencies Act is contemplated next time. Eric Sorensen, Global News.
It is very unusual for a sitting prime minister to publicly take the stand like Trudeau did today. Only two others have before him: John A. Macdonald in 1873 and Paul Martin in 2005 for very different reasons. Macdonald testified at a royal commission looking into government contracts and if they were awarded in exchange for campaign financing. And you might remember, Martin was questioned in the Gomery inquiry over concerns about a misappropriation of government funds. Good news for parents with sick children. The federal health minister says the emergency import of 1 million kids' pain relievers are now hitting pharmacy shelves.
In other places, it might take an additional day or so, but we'll expect that in the next week, the availability of those doses will be quite clear.
An additional 500,000 more imports are expected in the next 3 weeks. Domestic production has also ramped up with more than 1 million children's Advil products manufactured by Canadian companies this month alone. That news comes as the flu is spreading more quickly than in years past, especially among kids. That's fueling concerns because ERs and ICUs are getting packed. Children's hospitals have started canceling surgeries. But as Heather Yourex-West explains, the Alberta government won't allow mask mandates in school or let classes move online.
For families with school-aged kids, it's been a difficult fall.
We've been sick basically for 3 months since we've been back into school.
With viral illnesses like COVID, RSV, and the flu surging, schools are seeing student absence levels rise. Staff are getting sick too. But no matter how bad it gets, Alberta schools will no longer be able to move online. Alberta's education minister announced Thursday schools must ensure, quote, access to in-person learning, even when high numbers of students and staff are sick. Also saying students cannot be denied in-person learning due to their decision to wear or not wear a mask.
That's a recognition that we've been asking for, and school divisions across this province have been asking for, is that health decisions need to be made by health officials.
The virus appears to have arrived several weeks earlier than a normal flu season, and the growth rate or the number of cases increasing per week is again on a scale we really haven't seen in recent memory.
And with children's hospitals already under pressure, this infectious diseases researcher believes public health measures will be necessary at some point soon, whether those measures take place in schools or someplace else.
It's a tough one because I know if I have a 4-year-old and if my kid had immune system problems, I would probably be one of those hypersensitive parents.
It's a little bit worrying, especially that kids are getting so sick, and masks are kind of our only surefire way to protect what little space we have, especially in the classroom.
Even without mandates, health officials are encouraging mask use again, urging everyone to get the COVID and flu vaccines too. This flu season may not peak until early next year. Heather, Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
In Saskatchewan, there's renewed attention on the story of two Soto sisters from the Keeseekoose First Nation who have been jailed for nearly 30 years. Next month, they're going to learn if they'll be granted bail, while a federal review determines if a miscarriage of justice landed them there in the first place. Our new correspondent, Melissa Ridgen, explains.
You nervous? No. On the steps of Courthouse, a bittersweet reunion for Odelia and Narissa Cusons, together for the first time in 20 years.
I know once she leaves, I know it's going to kick in and I'm going to cry. Because we have to leave again. We're both strong in the mind. But, you know, it's hard. You know, I'm pretty sure everybody goes through this. We're happy here on the outside, but the inside we're hurting.
It was surreal. It was emotional when I was sitting there with her in the courtroom. Now we're much older. Like, I was 18, now I'm 48. My sister is 20 now, she's going to be 51, so it's, you know, we're getting older, but we're still being strong despite being apart from each other.
This is the same courthouse where in 1994 they were sentenced to life in prison for a crime their cousin admitted to in a story by APTN News that helped get them here today.
I said I wasn't there and stuff like that, you know. And the second time I said I was there, but I left before everything happened. And the third time I said I fessed up to what I did. Because as a kid, you're scared and stuff like that. You're worried and what's going to happen. And
do you think they should be free?
Yeah, I think so. I know so.
The sisters were barely adults in 1993 with their 14-year-old cousin drinking with 70-year-old Anthony Joseph Dolph at his farm near Kamsack, Saskatchewan. They say when Dolph propositioned them, the party ended, as did his life, beaten to death. Admitting to the crime in court, their cousin was out of jail in 2 years. The sisters who denied taking part received life sentences.
The case caught the attention of Innocence Canada, which is providing free legal fees for the sisters. Senator Kim Pate says that they are victims of a justice system that's stacked against Indigenous women. Canada's most famous exoneree, David Milgaard, he advocated for the women just before he passed away earlier this year. Federal Justice Minister David Lametti says that their case requires a federal review. While that's ongoing, they want to be free, as it could take years. But Saskatchewan prosecutors say they will argue against that next month, and they don't want media there reporting on it.
A judge will rule on the publication ban next week. Prosecutors argue reports could taint a jury pool if there's a new trial. The sisters' time together in court was too short, but they thanked media who've kept the story in the spotlight.
To get awareness out there that women in prison, we need help. Like, there's a lot of injustices still.
Melissa Ridgen, Global News, Winnipeg.
A new tool in the fight against suspected online predators. Coming up, an all-access look at the new technology helping investigators in Alberta. It's been called an epidemic, and law enforcement agencies know they can't fight it alone. The number of online predators targeting Canadian youth is increasing, and so is the amount of child sexual exploitation material. Often, there are not enough regulations or resources to make a dent. For the new reality, Dallas Flexhog takes us to the front lines with a specialized police team in Alberta that has a high-tech tool critical for catching predators.
It's early morning in Calgary, and police are moving in on a suspect home.
City Police, open the door.
Hi, good morning. Police, you have a search warrant. This search is part of an investigation involving suspected online child sexual abuse material. The Southern Alberta Internet Child Exploitation Unit, or ICE, has been working on this case for more than a year.
When I started in 2013, I don't even think we'd hit 400 cases for the whole year. And this year, we will probably hit close to 1,500 cases.
ICE has a high-tech tool, a mobile evidence recovery lab called Myrtle for short. Global News got rare access inside.
Not all ICE units could afford to have a mobile forensic unit, so we're super lucky, super grateful. It is life-altering for how we do business.
That's because officers can seize items and bring them here for the techs to review immediately.
Traditionally, before, exhibits had to come back to the office and get subjected to a full forensic analysis, which is time. So with Myrtle, we can typically drill them down to, okay, we only need 3 of those items because the rest have no evidentiary value.
Over the course of the next few hours, exhibits arrive and the forensic examiners go through it all meticulously. After hours of searching and analyzing, one says they found some disturbing videos.
Okay, this could be bad.
Is that him?
Maybe.
That's enough for me right now.
The suspect is now facing 5 charges. It's too soon to tell what the outcome will be, as the allegations will need to be tested in court. Investigators know this problem is insidious and pervasive, and it's why ICE gave us access to their operations to show how this tool can be vital in catching child predators.
Knowing that you can only just scratch the surface of what's going on, that to me is the toughest part of my job.
I think that's the fear of everybody in this unit, is missing a child that's being abused. At the end of the day, the victims of the crime are the most vulnerable in our society.
Dallas Flexhawk, Global News.
And you can watch Dallas's full report on the new reality Saturday at 5 p.m. Pacific, right here on Global. Black Friday mindfulness ahead. Retailers looking to make a difference on the busiest shopping day of the year. Black Friday is here.
Good morning, come on in.
These shoppers lined up in the cold in Toronto. The Retail Council of Canada says on average people are planning to spend nearly $800 over the holidays. But as Anne Gaviola explains, many retailers are inviting people to rethink rampant consumerism.
A typical Black Friday scene. Long lineups outside big box stores, chaos in malls, people hunting for the ultimate deals. Consumerism on steroids. Payments processor Moneris predicts Black Friday spending volumes will be up nearly 10% this year compared with 2021.
The idea of pushing product and sales and discounts on people isn't something that resonates with us as a brand.
Some retailers are taking a different approach, though. Edmonton-based Poppy Barley is inviting customers to use their dollars to make a difference, rather than slashing prices.
Instead, we donate all proceeds from our sales, up to $20,000, to a not-for-profit.
Indigenous-owned slow-fashion women's wear boutique Anne Muller in Winnipeg isn't offering discounts either. The owner of the Canadian-made brand, which has been around for 18 years, is encouraging mindful rather than mindless purchases.
To actually stick with our core values of buying better by buying less, and we are offering free alterations for life on the pieces that you purchase.
Pandemic restrictions were a windfall for large retailers, but dealt a huge financial blow to smaller businesses. Rising labor costs, inflation, supply chain snarls, and climbing interest rates mean many are still struggling.
I have many friends who own small businesses, and 99% of them are in the make or break area right now. They're not even sure if they can make it through because it's just been so hard.
Black Friday is traditionally the busiest day in Canada in terms of total transactions and dollars spent.
There's so much pressure on us to slash prices and compete with the big box shops, and we just can't. We can't do that.
Small businesses say it's more important than ever to vote with your dollars. Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
Gifts with heart. Next, the London charity hoping shoppers will choose love this holiday season. If you're someone who loves giving gifts but feel the people in your life don't need more stuff, there's a unique shop run by a charity, and it's hoping you'll choose love instead. Europe Bureau Chief Crystal Gamansing explains.
It might look like your average holiday pop-up store, but this one in London's famous Soho district is different. It presents shoppers with alternatives.
It's a shop you don't leave with anything.
but I suppose you leave with a good feeling instead.
At Choose Love, shoppers pick gifts for people in need. Warm clothes for those trying to survive formidable conditions in Ukraine. Food and water for children in Afghanistan, where rates of illness and malnutrition are rising. Even life-saving supports for those risking it all trying to get to Europe in hopes of claiming asylum.
We really feel like we're a movement of people who all choose love. We all do what we can to support each other.
More than 250 groups working in 26 countries are supported by shoppers who put compassion in their carts online or in person.
I want to help everyone. If I had money, I would give the lot away.
Many tears end up on the floor as staff explain how people have been helped over the past 6 years. Shoppers can give in their name or someone else's, and they can pick up a little something to put under the tree.
I'm here as a tourist, so I'm from Sweden. So I really like the concept.
A host of celebrity endorsements are helping to boost sales, which will continue right up until Christmas. The retail spaces are gifted to the UK-based charity, and sponsors help cover operating costs.
With the holiday shopping season in full swing, the hope is that the physical store will be a window of opportunity for people to give back. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
And that's Global National for this Friday. I'm Farah Nasser, and on behalf of our whole crew, I want to thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us. Tonight's Your Canada is Glen Mill Pond in Corner Brook, Newfoundland and Labrador. We love seeing your Canada, so please keep emailing us those photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Until tomorrow, take care of yourselves and each other. Good night.